Welcome back, everyone. In fact, welcome to session 13 of season 2, and this session is we are continuing basically what we were doing in the previous session, and we were summing up. So let's continue our sum up section for now. So let's get back to the PowerPoint that we had. So we understood the difference between front end and back end, and what do we mean when we say we send the data from front end to the back end. So we send data from the client's computer to the server that the website is running on, and we send the data using form tag, and inside for that form tag there are 4 tags that we mentioned. So let's go to the next slide. And the thing is, when we send data from front end to back end, we do that by a pair of keys and values. For example, for this key, this value, this key, this value, this key, this value, because in a form there might be more than one inputs. For example, we input a name for one of our inputs, and we say the attribute name is first name, and user might write something in it. For example, Ali or Saifi, or for the website you can type yourdailycodes.com. He sends some data, and we send those data from keys and values. So this name attribute is something that is very important. Also have in mind in that. And for the form tag, if you sum up the form tag, there are lots of different attributes that you can attach to a form tag, but the 2 main attributes are action and method attribute, where action is actually telling where we are going to submit the form. Well, for now, we just wrote a pound sign inside these actions. Well, this pound sign, it means the current route. It means that even if you delete that, write nothing inside that, the thing that happens is, let's get back to this one, to the output that we have. The thing is, let's see it. Is this that? Yes. When we submit this form, it submits it to the same URL. It's to the same URL that we are currently inside that. So the default value for that, I said it's null. Null, it's nothing. It has no default value. But if we write nothing in that, it submits the form to the current route. For example, if we are inside google.com, see, let's go inside. This is a form inside google.com. So if we hit inspect on this and see, the action, this is a text area, but he has used CSS in order to make that pretty. But if we go, we will finally end up to a form tag. Of course, we must find a form tag finally. So let's make that bigger. So this is the form tag. As you can see, the action of this form tag on google.com is on search. It means on a /search. So it's a relative path, not an absolute path. The absolute path and relative path is like the absolute paths start with HTTPS or something but it's a relative path. It means to the same domain, google.com, which it's inside google.com /search. So if you submit the data, it sends the data to google.com /search. So that's why when you hit enter, you can see we are now at google.com /search. And this is the query string. These are so many different data that it's sending, and we do not need to care what are those. So it's sending the data from GET request. As you can see, we have 2 types of form submission, one post request and the other one is GET request. And when we submit a form with a GET request, as you can see, the method of this is on GET on google.com. And they have turned off the autocomplete, so there is no autocomplete on there, because it wants to suggest himself, to use the suggestions of itself. That's why they have turned off the autocomplete. And it will submit as a GET request. That's why we see the arguments in the browser. For example, let's say hello world. Okay, we will see this hello world at the top of the string. So you can see search.com, it says that the queue is hello world, and there are some other things that it's automatically being appended, and we don't care how it's happening. But the point is it's GET request, so that's why we see the values that we type inside the URL. This is GET request. But in POST request, we do not see them in the URL. It will be sent in another way. So this is the action and method attribute that we have. We could go on and talk about differences between GET and POST, but if you're really interested, you can search about the differences between GET and POST. But it's just a method, and imagine that for you as a front-end developer, for you as a person who is working on the HTML section, you just need to care, hey, backend developer, what should I put there, GET or POST? And it says GET or POST, something like that. So that's how much you care about GET and POST. But if you're really interested, you can search more about the differences between these two. And about input tag, we had so many different input tags. The default for the type and it has three main attributes. The type and the default is text, and it could be text, password, email, number, checkbox. There are so many different input types, and we did not cover all of them. But if you want to see all of them, these are all of them. The input type, button, input type checkbox, color. You can guess that color is used for what date, but something that we did not see and did not use was input type file. We can actually start to use one of them. For example, here after this we can use an input type of file, so you can see how they look. So come back here, input type, the type, you can put the type on file, and you can set the name on, for example, image. This would be something like image. And we come back here, hit refresh, and you can see now this is a choose file section, and we can choose a file actually here. And there is actually, and now as you can see, when I click on choose file, you can see I can only choose one file, for example, this image, for example. But if we go ahead and apply an attribute to this multiple, and as you can see, this multiple, some people call them Boolean attributes, some people call them single attributes. Every attribute that we've seen so far, they have a name and a value. For example, name is action, the value is something. The name is method, the value is get. The name is name, the value is first name. But this one does not have a name and value. It's just a single. It's just a text. It's just nothing. You just say multiple and that's it. Nothing else. What happens is now we can choose multiple images. You see, 1, 2, 3, or 3 items are selected. So there are some attributes also that could be attached to inputs, and these single ways, or Boolean, I like to call them Boolean because it's either it is multiple or it is not multiple. This just 2 ways. These Boolean attributes are much more. Multiple is not the only one. We will see some more even. For example, one of them could be required. Okay, this required attribute, it means user has to type something inside this first name, otherwise you are not allowed to submit the form, because this value is required. So we come back here, hit refresh. For example, let's clean what's inside that, and when we submit the form, it says please fill out this form, because this form is this field is required. Please fill out this field. Sorry. Let's clean the value inside that. Yeah. So there are lots of some of these attributes are about validation, like required, things like that, you see. So there are lots of other attributes as well that we haven't covered yet. But the main attributes are type, name, and value. These are the 3 main values that we saw throughout this course. And another tag was select option. And do you remember how did select an option work? For the option values, so this is a sum up section here, so you have everything here, and let's go ahead inside this W3 school. This is something that I want to say about references. For example, imagine that there's like it's 10 days later and you have forgot about select an option, how they were actually, how was select an option, how did they work together. If you forget things like that, you always search, and for example, you can select tag in W3 Schools. This W3 Schools is a great website for documentations and things like that. So let's come back here, let's come to this. You can search for that, and as you can see, for our sum up section, these are the things that you need to know about select and have in mind. That this has a name attribute, can attach a name attribute to that, the value, and what does this selected means. This selected we see now. For now, let's try it yourself here. You can see when we open this form, the selected value is Volvo, because Volvo is the first one. But we can use an attribute called selected. Okay, selected. And let's run this. Sorry, I hit Control S. Let's cancel all of them. And if we run the code, you can see now the Opel is selected because I have attached the selected attribute. And this selected is actually a Boolean. And also for input type checkboxes, things like that. See here another thing. Let's go inside. Let's copy this select inside our codes here. Okay, we have that, and call it car. So you have that car. And the another thing that I wanted to say, see, this was selected, right? We use select, but for the input type checkboxes, let's see here, for example, label for some checkboxes, some check boxes, and let's copy this one, clean this, input type name, and call it test. Input type checkbox, and say num1, num2, num3. So let's imagine that we have 3 input type checkboxes. You can see I can use the selected attribute to mark something as selected for when the form is being loaded, and I can check something by the checked attribute. So hit refresh and you can see it's checked attribute. The same thing goes for the radius as well. For the radius also we can use the checked. So for the radius and the checkboxes, you can use the word checked, but for the selected, you could for the select and tag, you use the word selected in order to mark something as selected as the initial value. So as you can see now, for the when the form is being loaded, the first thing that is it marks them as selected or checked. So this is it. I have covered almost what I wanted, but there are just some attributes. So this is where I'm going to use from this moment to the end of this session. I'm going to use W3 Schools in order to sum up and see if we didn't miss anything else. So we saw some different input types, and there were so many different input types that we saw: input type text, input type radio, input type checkbox, and you can go inside W3 Schools and see all of them and see if for example, input type color is something that we did not cover, because it's obvious that what it's used for. It's used for selecting some color. And it's not that common to use. It happens that we have used input type color, but not as frequent as input type text or input type password, things like that. So this is it. Things. And now that I look at this, I don't see anything here that I haven't already covered. But for these things, there are some other form tags. We covered input, we covered label, select, we did text area, button, but things like field set, legend, data set, output, option group. Option group is for grouping the options inside a option tag. So you can use this W3 Schools for full reference, because some of them that I did not cover was just because they weren't that useful or that common, or that they're not frequently used as much as the other things. So And different input types, you can see all of them. For example, input type date, we saw what input type date, but there's also input type week, input type time, input types, things like that. Okay, and input type range actually is a good thing, but it's really a little hard to customize with CSS, the appearance of it, I mean. And input type range, it's obvious it's used for a range. You can select a range with that. And these HTML attributes is something that I think we can cover. We saw required, what was that? And things like pattern. I'm trying a placeholder. Placeholder is a good thing to mention. For example, what is placeholder? See, come back to our codes here. See, this is an input type and it's required. For example, placeholder is something that we write inside our input that is present, and as soon as we type, it goes away. For example, here we say write your name, okay, in the placeholder. We come back here, hit refresh, you can see it says write your name as a placeholder, and as soon as we start typing, it just goes away. So this placeholder is actually a good thing. And the pattern is very advanced. You don't need to worry about that pattern. No one use pattern in HTML. I can guarantee that. If we are going to use pattern, probably we are going to use a library or a plugin or something else for the validation. I don't believe anyone gonna use pattern in a pattern attribute in HTML. And for the input type number, we saw that what does these steps do actually. For example, the input type number, the step is on 3, as you can see now. When I hit the arrow, the 3 goes up. And there's also a min attribute, and for example, min 100. For example, let's say min is 0 and the max is 100. Okay, you can see, and we hit run. And as you can see, this is when we say the max is on 100, it stops at the 100, but we still can type bigger than 100, but it doesn't let the form get submitted because it says the value must be less than or equal than 100. So it has this min and max value has validation effects for that. So there are also other attributes that could be attached to that. And things like autocomplete, we saw. I want to find a list of those autocompletes and things like that. For example, there's an attribute called form action. This form action could be attached to input type submit or button type submit. For example, we saw that, see here, we saw that we can use action for the form tag, and we are actually saying, hey, where the form is going to be submitted. But if you want to attach that to a button type submit, we use form action rather than action. So things like that, it's regularly being used. So I'm really glad we didn't miss so much. But the bottom line is you can use these websites and things like that for the full documentation reference. And let's search, for example, autocomplete attribute W3, and I showed you what does autocomplete does. I want to see what attribute else like autocomplete exists in the world. In the world, this autocomplete all HTML attributes. Oof, you can find that in all the HTML attributes. Oh, okay, forget about that. So this is it. I'm so happy in this session because I thought there's a lot of things that we haven't covered, but now that I look at it, I see we almost covered everything, and this is it. And there's another attribute that let's say, for example, target. This target is like, do you remember when we used a tag? Let's cover this one and finish this session. For example, when we had a tag, and imagine that this a tag just redirects user to, for example, google.com, and say click. Okay, and come back here. When I click here, so of course I will be redirected to google.com, but it had a target. We had a target attribute for a tags, and this target attribute was, for example, blank, self-top, and the only important one of them was blank, and was parent. I think parent opened in a new window. But for example, if we set that on blank, it opens in a new tab, underline blank. Actually, you can see it opens in a new tab. And also for that we have for target, here we can apply the target to form as well. For example, let's set that on blank and come back here, hit refresh, and when we submit the form, we need to type something in that. Yes, as you can see, it opened in a new tab. So let's see again, it's opened in a new tab. So for that form action and things like that, we have also target as well, and there's something called attribute a no validate. So these are things that you can find in documentation. So this is it. I thought there are so many things that we haven't covered. No, I actually covered all the most important stuff, and this is it. This is all the knowledge that you need to have in order to tell other people, hey, I know about HTML forms, and this is it. That's enough for this session. So, and also for this season. So this is it. Hope to see you in the next season. Bye bye.